Well, howdy there, folks, and welcome into today's module here in the Cream Masterclass. I am your host and coach and teacher, Dave Payerchin, and I'm very excited today. We are talking all about wholesaling, and we're talking about the do's, the don'ts, why we love wholesaling, how to do it the correct way. We're going to be going over the paperwork. We're going to be really giving you a deep dive all into wholesaling. And I'm here to let you guys know this is a major part of our business. The biggest wealth building opportunity in real estate, folks, is going to be with the buy and hold. We always stay true to that. That's the main objective. However, when we are in the real estate business and we're full time, we got to keep the cash coming in. And there's no better way to get hits of cash than wholesaling. Another form of wholesaling, which we'll be covering in a future module, is called novations. And we do that quite a bit as well. But that's essentially just another form of what we're talking about here today, wholesaling. And in my opinion, this is the best risk to reward strategy in real estate. It's massive reward potential with very little to no risk at all. And that's why we love wholesaling. So today, everybody, we are getting into, let's go right here to the agenda. We're going to give you a good overview of what this is. We're talking about the risks that come with real estate and why you're not going to have any of those risks when you're doing wholesaling, doing it the way we teach you to do it. We're going to be talking about the real estate fundamentals. And one of the coolest things about wholesaling is you get to practice the real estate fundamentals without the risk, right? It's ideal. It's an ideal thing for entry level if you're new to real estate. But even if you're not new to real estate, folks, we do wholesale deals every single month because it keeps the cash coming in. It's lifeblood to the business. It's oxygen to your real estate business. You can keep the cash coming in as you build your long-term portfolio, as you build your long-term investments. That's why we love wholesaling. We're going to be talking about the do's and the don'ts. We're talking about, can you wholesale properties? Can you be a wholesaler and do wholesaling with a real estate license? If you have a real estate license, we get that question all the time. We're going to be talking about the different ways to close these deals, either a double closing or an assignment, the differences between the two, pros and cons of both. And then we're going to be getting into the contracts and the paperwork, and we are giving you guys copies of this paperwork. There's no excuses. We want to give you everything that you need to be successful here in our master class. So let's get into the overview. What we're talking about doing here, everybody, is control without ownership. You're controlling a piece of real estate, but you're not owning it. And you're controlling it with a purchase and sale agreement. So as an example, what you're going to do is find a motivated seller. And again, in future modules, we'll be talking all about finding and negotiating deals, right? For right now, we're just giving you the overview and we're going to control this. So we find a motivated seller. Let's just pretend they want to sell. It's a house. It's worth 200, right? The ARV, the after repair value of this property is 200, but it's a motivated seller and you're able to get this thing for 120. It's a good deal, right? Well, you can control this deal with a purchase and sale agreement, which you're going to have a copy of, and you're going to know exactly what to say and how to do this. You control it, you get it into contract for 120, then you go find a buyer, a cash buyer, for let's say 135. And that buyer for 135 is going to come in for the cash for 135. The seller gets the 120 that you promised them with the purchase agreement, and you're going to keep that 15K fee. And that is often called a assignment fee on the settlement statement. When this transaction closes, you're going to see an assignment fee to you or your company because you basically structured the whole deal. You put it into contract, you're controlling this deal with the contract, right? Then you went and found a cash buyer who comes in for more than you're in contract with the seller for, and then you're going to keep that spread. So essentially what this is, everybody, it's like being a bird dog. You ever heard that term before, being a bird dog? It's like the dog that goes out and, finds the birds for the hunters, right? Or it basically, the hunter shoots the bird, and then the bird dog goes out and picks up the bird and brings it back to the owner, right? It's a bird dog. You're the one who's out there finding the deal and bringing it to the cash buyer. So you are finding this deal, you're controlling this deal with a purchase contract, you're finding a cash buyer who's willing to pay more for this deal, and then you're keeping that spread. So there's risk in real estate, and this risk comes into play with regardless of what type of real estate that you're doing. Doesn't matter if you're doing mobile homes, it doesn't matter if you're doing commercial, industrial, land. There's always risk to everything, and the risk comes into play in this business. Whenever you're taking on debt, whenever you're borrowing money, there's risk involved in that. Whenever you are writing a check, typically you as a real estate investor will be writing checks to contractors, vendors, suppliers. If you're doing fix and flips or fix and rent, which we do that quite a bit, there's risk involved with writing a check. Anytime you're handing money to somebody else, there's a risk you're never going to see that money again, right? There's also risk with owning property. Let's pretend you own a rental property. Somebody falls down the stairs and there's risk. They can sue you. You can get sued whenever you own property. And these risks, again, carry over to any type of real estate that you're doing. This is always the risk. With wholesaling, you don't have to take any of these risks. You're not taking on any debt because you're not getting a loan. You're simply controlling the house with a contract. You're not getting a loan, right? You're not writing a check. Maybe you're doing some earnest money, but as you're going to see in the purchase agreement that we share with you, there is no earnest money, right? Earnest money is not mandatory to close a contract for a valid contract. It is not mandatory. Don't let anyone tell you you need earnest money for a valid contract. It's not true. And then you're never owning the property. You're simply controlling the property, but you're not owning it. So there's no risk. It's not like if somebody slips and falls, you're on the hook. Okay. So wholesaling is very risk averse. There is no risk when it comes to there's no loans involved. You're not stroking checks and you never own the property. Also, we love wholesaling because it allows you to practice the fundamentals of real estate for relatively little to no risk. Meaning, what are the fundamentals of real estate? And again, these fundamentals, everybody, these carry over to any type of real estate that you're doing. I don't care if it's commercial, industrial, mobile homes, whatever. These are the same fundamentals. To be successful in real estate, you need to do these three things. You need to know how to do this. You need to know how to find good deals. And typically, these deals are coming from off-market deals. Okay? When you're wholesaling out there, you're not finding properties that are on market. You're not finding properties that are listed on the MLS for every buyer in town to see, and then trying to put that in contract and then going to find a buyer who maybe didn't see it already online. That's not how this works. It is about finding off-market deals. No one knows about this deal. You found the deal through your marketing strategies, which we're going to get into. You control the deal with a contract. It's not listed on the market or anything like that. You're the only one involved who's working with the seller, and then you're the one who brings it to the market and brings it to the cash buyers. Okay? So, and this fundamental skill is going to serve you well in any type of real estate that you do, whether it be single family houses or commercial real estate, industrial real estate. It's about finding deals that no one else knows about. That's how you succeed. So you're going to be doing that in this wholesaling business. In your real estate investing business, you're always on the hunt for new deals. Also, you get to practice the fundamental of analyzing deals. We are going to be getting into analyzing deals in future modules as well. But again, this is what you're going to be doing. I mean, when you're analyzing a deal, you're really just paying attention to what we call the core four, which we're going to kind of get into a deep dive on this stuff. But the core four is, what is the value, right? What is the after repair value? What is the rehab amount? How much construction would it take to bring it up to that after repair value? What is your purchase price? And then how much would it potentially rent for if it was all fixed up? That's the core four of real estate, which we're going to deep dive on. But this is what you're doing. You're finding off-market deals, you're analyzing off-market deals, and then you're negotiating with sellers. And I don't care what type of real estate that you do, whether it be single family, commercial, industrial, whatever the case may be, you need to kind of negotiate the deal. So wholesaling allows you to do all of these fundamentals in a low to no risk environment, and that's finding deals, analyzing deals, and negotiating with sellers, putting these properties into contract. So let's get into some of the do's and don'ts. Use a purchase and sale agreement that has an inspection clause. This is what we call kind of the weasel clause because it allows you to weasel out of the deal. And what I mean by that is, let's go back to our example. Let's pretend you found the motivated seller. The house ARV is 200,000. You put it into contract for 120,000. And let's say you can't find that buyer for 135,000. You can't find a buyer who's willing to pay more than you're in contract with the seller for. There's no spread. Well, you need to be able to exit that deal and exit that situation. And the way you're going to get out of a deal that does no longer make sense because there's no money in the deal for you, the way you're going to get out is with an inspection clause. You're going to exercise your right to leave this deal and back out of the deal. And it's going to be based on the inspection clause. And if you use the paperwork that we share with you, it does have an inspection clause in there. Don't drag the deal out if you don't have a buyer. Back to our example. Now, this is just doing a disservice to the seller. You got a motivated seller, you're in contract for 120. You can't find somebody for 135. You can't even find somebody for 130 or 125. There's no money in this deal for you. Well, go back to the seller and just kind of shake hands and part as friends and get out of the deal sooner than later. Don't drag this thing out for 30, 60, 90 days. Everybody, and waste the seller's time. If you can't make money on the deal, don't drag this thing out. It's doing a disservice to the seller. Be honest and upfront with the seller. Let them know. You're putting the property into contract, but you're going to be putting this in front of your partners. And that's essentially what a cash buyer is. They're partnering with you to fulfill this deal, right? Let them know you're not the end buyer. We do. It's okay. You don't need to pretend like you're something you're not. Be upfront, be honest, and don't market a property you don't own. This is important. So remember, you're just into contract on this deal. You don't own the deal. So when you're marketing for a cash buyer, and the best way to find cash buyers is really on Facebook and Facebook groups. When you do a post, you're going to want to post just, you have a contract for sale because that's all you have. You don't own the property. You have a contract for sale. Okay, you can only market what you actually have. And what you have is a contract. You don't own the property. You can't pretend like you're the owner that's selling this property. You can market a contract for 123 Main Street is for sale. It's a small distinction, but it's an important distinction. You're marketing the contract for sale, not the property itself. So, can you wholesale if you have a real estate license? The answer to that is absolutely. Absolutely, you can. It is all about your intent and it's all about your marketing. Now, here's the thing. If you're a realtor and your broker is producing leads for you that are potential listings for the brokerage, those are the brokerage's leads. If people are contacting you as a realtor, or if the people are contacting the brokerage for a listing opportunity, you need to treat that as a listing. You're not going to come in and try to wholesale these leads. However, if you're doing your own marketing as a We Buy Houses company, as an LLC that you set up for yourself, this is a separate entity than your real estate license. Yeah, they contacted you as a We Buy Houses company, not as a realtor to list their home. It's black and white. If they're contacting you to list their home, you need to put on your realtor hat if you're a realtor and treat it such way, right? If they are contacting you as a investor, as a We Buy Houses person, because you're doing your marketing and you're finding these deals, yeah, that's a different story. But regardless, you're always going to disclose in the purchase and sale agreement that you're a realtor. There's nothing to hide. Let them know in your purchase and sale agreement. I was a realtor for over 10 years, and we've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these deals. we always disclosed that a member of the buyer or a member of the company entering this contract is a licensed realtor in the state of Ohio. It's that simple. You put it in the contract and just be upfront about it. So, can you wholesale properties if you have a real estate license? The answer is absolutely yes, but it is all about the marketing and the intent of the lead. How did they contact you? Did they contact you as an investor, or did they contact you as a realtor to list their home? They need to be treated appropriately. And then if it is a wholesale deal, regardless of where the lead came from, right? You're always going to want to disclose that you are a licensed real estate professional. If you're not a realtor, don't even worry about it. Don't worry about this at all. This is only applicable to people who have a real estate license. Now, after you secure your buyer, you found a buyer, right? You're going to write an agreement. Let's go back to our example. You're in contract with the motivated seller for 120. You found the cash buyer who's interested in this property for 135. Well, you're going to write an agreement, and we're going to give you copies of this agreement as well. But you're going to write a new agreement with the buyer, the cash buyer, for 135. When you close, when you bring this thing to the title company to get this thing closed, there's two ways to actually close this deal where the buyer's coming in with the 135, the seller gets their 120, and you collect your spread. The first way is just a simple assignment of contract. And this is where, remember, you're in contract with the seller for 120, you found the buyer for 135. You can write a very simple assignment for $15,000. That's the spread. And you can assign your contract. So the buyer for 135 is now stepping into your shoes to close with the seller, and they paid you $15,000 for the rights to close with the seller for 120, making their entire purchase price 135. Cool. It's an assignment. And here's the biggest thing. If you just do an assignment and assign your interests and assign this contract to the buyer, it is going to show up on the settlement statement. The seller is going to see, the buyer is going to see, everybody's going to see that you made the $15,000 on this transaction. If you don't care about that, just do assignments. It's great. It works every time. It's wonderful. However, one caveat, it is going to show you, or it's going to show the world, it's going to show everybody, the seller, the buyer, everybody, how much you're making on it. Now, sometimes, I mean, everybody, we've done wholesale deals where we have made over six figures on one deal, multiple, not multiple six figures, but we've done multiple deals where we have made over six figures on a deal. Crazy, right? Well, if you got a fat spread like that, you may not want the seller seeing, and you may want to keep your business personal at that point. You may not want the buyer seeing that you're making 100 grand or 50 grand or some large sum of money, because, they may want to renegotiate. Sometimes people are like that in business, right? They see you're making 50K. Let's say you're in contract with the seller for 120 and they're buying it for 170. You got a 50K spread. Maybe you come up with a buyer. The buyer says, "Oh, I don't want to pay you 170 anymore. You're making 50K. I'm only happy with you making 20. I want a 30K discount. I'm only paying you 140 for this property now," right? That's how business is. It's cutthroat. Well, in the event you want to not disclose to the seller and to the buyer how much you're making, and we would do this, we would kind of, we always do this if the spread is pretty meaty. If it's a big spread, we're just going to do a double close. So in the event of a double close, this is where we're going to close with the seller. We're going to line up what's called a transactional funding, or we're going to use our own cash, or, you get a big meaty deal like this, you let us know. We'll fund it for you. I mean, it's easy to find the money for the deal when it's a transactional deal where essentially, we're going to close with the seller for that 120 right off the bat. Boom, close, private lender, they'll give us the money. We close with the seller. That's closing number one. And then within an hour, within 30 minutes, now closing number two happens. And that's the buyer actually closes with us. So there was two distinct transactions. In the first way, an assignment, there's one transaction, and your assignment fee is right there on the closing paperwork, and everybody sees it. With a double close, when you have a large spread, okay, you may want to do two different closings and then, close with the seller for the 120 and then turn around and sell it to your buyer, for the 170 or whatever. If you got a 50K spread or something like that, just do a double closing. Now, the only caveat is there's two sets of closing costs because there's two distinct definitive closings. You closing with the seller and then you closing with the buyer. And yes, it all happens essentially simultaneously, but there is two closings. There is going to be some added costs involved. Sometimes it's definitely worth it just to have the peace of mind where you don't want people kind of feeling weird about your money. Unfortunately, this happens quite a bit. In the law of abundance and the law of, prosperity, really, you shouldn't care what other people are making on your deal. People shouldn't care what you're making on your deals. But unfortunately, it's not always that way. So if you kind of want to not put it all on Front Street of what you're making, do a double close. That's the difference here. Okay? So moving on, let's go over the purchase and sale agreement. And again, you will have a PDF for this right here in Skool. This is a very simple purchase and sale agreement, and this is what we use for all of our sellers. I'll go through it with you real quick because I go through this with sellers all the time. And I'll kind of give you a sneak peek that, we're going to be talking about negotiation. This is how I go through the purchase and sale agreement. Okay. We are the buyer. Put your entity in there. And then Mr. Seller, that's your name. It's spelled correctly, right? Seller's name goes right there in the seller box. Real property, that's where you put the address of the property. Purchase price, in our example, that's where you put the 120 or whatever you're putting the property in contract for. Purchase conditions, number 3, most important, it is subject to an inspection. There you go. If you need to weasel out of the deal, if you need to back out of the deal, bullet point number 3 allows you to do that. Date of the closing is 30 days. So you got 30 days to line up your buyer, but it does say you got a 90-day extension to be granted if it means, if you need that extension, it's built into this, a 90-day extension. But I'm here to let you know it's not the right thing to do to drag this thing out. If you're not getting any interest from a buyer within your first couple of weeks, just get out of the deal. Don't tie the seller's hands. It's going to be an inconvenience. And it's not the right thing to do. But essentially, you got 120 days with this particular contract. Occupancy, that just means, the seller shall deliver possession to the buyer no later than the closing date. That just means the buyer can't move in and start working on the property until the property actually closes. Personal property is left and transferred with the property. So that just means if the seller leaves a bunch of junk at the property, which they always do, if they leave some appliances and stuff like that, that's all being sold with the property. There's no, you close the deal and 6 months later the seller comes back and says, "Oh, I want that old ice chest in the basement." No, it's gone. That just means any personal property left on the property is sold with the property. Taxes and utilities, that just means any back taxes or back utilities the seller has, it's going to come out of their proceeds. You're not paying for that. However, the closing costs and the title fees, you're going to pay the closing costs every single time. You're paying the closing costs simply because you want to control this transaction from beginning to end. You want to use your preferred title company, okay? And number 9 is this is the entire agreement. That just means there's no side agreements. It's not like, you're promising the seller, to give them some Amazon gift cards if they work with you. There's no side deal. This is the entire agreement. And finally, number 10, the buyer acknowledges this is an as-is deal and the seller's not expected to make any repairs. Now, you would probably add, if you're a licensed realtor, do bullet point number 11. Just type it in there for yourself. It's a PDF. You guys can edit this stuff. And, we use an online document signing platform. We use Dotloop, but you could use DocuSign. You could edit these docs. You could do anything that you want, but you would want to put in there if you're a licensed realtor that, buyer is a licensed realtor in the state of blank or whatever. Just disclose that you're a realtor or a member. If it's an LLC that's the buyer, just say a member of the buyer is a licensed realtor. Just disclose it. It's no big deal. So that is the purchase and sale agreement. Now let's finally wrap this up. Here's your assignment deal. So you got this thing in contract for the 120. Now you're finding a buyer, you got them for 135. This is the assignment agreement that we do. And top line, you're going to have the buyer. Remember, the buyer is your buyer now. You're the seller in this situation. So you find ABC home buyer who's paying 135 for this thing. You're in contract for 120. They're the buyer. You're the seller. Real property is the address. The purchase price is going to be the 135 or what the buyer is buying this property for in total. Purchase conditions, it's as is, date of the closing. You want to close with your buyer as fast as humanly possible. Occupancy, same thing. The buyer cannot possess the property till the deal's done. Personal property and fixtures, anything is going to get transferred with the property. Anything left at the property is transferred with the property. Taxes, any rents, this is a big one. So if it's a rental property, the seller is going to give a credit for the rents to the buyer, like a deposit. It's going to be transferred as well, right? When you're selling or when you're kind of doing investment property deals, the seller who collected a deposit from the tenant is going to transfer that deposit and credit that deposit to the buyer. If you notice here at the bottom of number 8, we actually add in a little $499 admin fee on the HUD. Why not? It's just a little fee for doing this deal. We kind of increase our spread a little bit. And if the buyer doesn't give us any flack about it, we leave it in there and make an extra 500 bucks. There you go. There's a little bonus for you guys. But the title fees, the buyer's paying all the closing costs. Because remember when you agreed with the seller that the buyer's paying all the closing costs, well, your buyer is paying all the closing costs. And they're throwing on a little extra $499 fee for us. You're welcome. Got you a little extra 500 bucks there. Earnest money. We look to collect at least $2,500 from our buyer, and it is a non-refundable deposit. We need to make sure this buyer is solid, so we collect that earnest money. We have them send it right to the title company. I think we might evolve into collecting the earnest money ourselves as a company, but when you're just getting started, have them deposited with the same title company where you submitted your purchase contract with the seller. They're already kind of doing the title work. Everything's all at one title company. This is the entire agreement. Remember, no side deals. And oh, there you go. Buyer, listen to this. It's still in there. It doesn't even need to be in there. I'm going to edit this as soon as I finish this video. It still says buyer acknowledges a member of the seller is a licensed real estate professional in the state of Ohio. Entered into this agreement with the intention of making a profit. I'm not a realtor anymore. I was for over 10 years. So we can remove that now. But as you can see, I used to be a realtor. If you're a realtor, you're going to want to add that to your purchase agreement with the seller, and it's already in there with your agreement with the buyer. So you sign this with the buyer. You already got your purchase and sale agreement with the seller. Everything's at the same title company. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. You guys are in the game now, everybody. Congratulations. So this has been a masterclass on wholesaling. Let us know what questions you got, but it doesn't have to be that hard, everybody. It could be easy. And this is a great way to bring in that extra cash. You could bring in 6 figures a month doing this, everybody. And what you're going to find, because the biggest thing that we do in our coaching and whatnot, we're all about the buy and hold, building a portfolio, because that's what's going to keep you guys, make you guys free for the long term, right? But while you're building that portfolio, it's good to have a wholesaling operation. In summary, there's not a lot of risk to this aspect of the business. It's the highest risk to reward, the highest reward to risk ratio in the business right here. And keep that oxygen flowing, keep those hits of cash coming in for yourself. And, when you're attracting leads, we're going to do a whole module all about attracting deals and leads and doing deals. You're not going to be able to buy and hold all of them. So getting some wholesaling going allows you to monetize the deals, even if you can't buy it for yourself for your buy and hold portfolio. It's a great way to monetize these leads. Can you do it if you have a real estate license? You better believe you can, and you should be doing it, as a matter of fact. So guys, don't be intimidated. Get out there, practice those fundamentals, find deals, analyze deals, negotiate deals, put these things into contract, find yourself a cash buyer for more. If the spread is deep, you're going to want to do a double closing instead of a assignment, but get out there, make it rain, everybody, make it happen. I will see you all on the next module.